Welcome back to Bumblebee, everyone. I hope you're ready for some ancient Egyptian family feud because we're counting down our top 10 powerful families that ruled ancient Egypt. Alright, so the Cambyses are up first. Cambyses was the son of Cyrus I and the successor of his father in Anshan as the king of Agistius of Media. According to the 5th century BC Greek historian Herodotus, Cambyses married a daughter of Astidius, by whom he became the father of Cyrus II. Cambyses II, aka Cyrus II, performed the ritual duties of the Babylonian king at the important New Year festival of 538 and of 530. Before Cyrus set out on his last campaign, he was appointed the regent in Babylon. That campaign was the conquest of Egypt, planned by Cyrus, and was a major achievement of Cambyses' reign once captured. This is the lunatic who liked to torture animals for entertainment and notoriously killed the Apis bull to torment the Greeks who worshipped it. Cambyses was traveling through Syria on his way back to Persia when he first heard reports of a revolt there, and then he died mysteriously in Syria in the summer of 522, either by his own hand or as the result of an accident. This is one of the few Persian families to have held the throne, the Zerzes Line. First we have the granddaddy Xerxes I, or the Great as titled by the 5th Persian king. He was the son of Darius the Great, and his reign lasted from 486 BC to 465 BC. He's well known in history for his attempted invasion of Greece and how later in the same year he was defeated in the Battle of Salamis, which led him to flee his own kingdom. He's known as both a Persian ruler and a pharaoh, as when he ruled Egypt it was also part of the Persian Empire. Little is known about the last years of Xerxes' life. After his reversal in Greece, he withdrew into himself and allowed himself to be drawn into his harem intrigues, in which he was in fact only a pawn. Thus he disposed of his brother's entire family at the demand of the queen. He was assassinated by his own commander of the royal bodyguard forces. Another son, Artaxerxes I, succeeded in retaining power. Artaxerxes I was given the throne by the commander of the guard, Artabanus, who had killed Xerxes. It's fine though, cause Xerxes Jr. got his daddy's lick back when he kills Arta about a month later. His reign, though generally peaceful, was disturbed by several insurrections, the first of which was the revolt of his brother. During his reign, Artaxerxes completed the Hall of 100 Columns at Persepolis, rebuilt the palace of Darius I at Susa after a fire, and Artaxerxes died of natural causes in 424 BCE, having ensured a peaceful succession by naming Xerxes II his legitimate heir. Xerxes II reigned for only a little over a month, however, before he was assassinated. Next is the Djoser Line. Starting with Djoser from the Second Kingdom, Egypt's 3rd dynasty. He undertook the construction of the earliest important stone buildings in Egypt. His reign, which probably lasted 19 years, was marked by great technological innovation in the use of stone architecture. The innovative structure was a departure from the traditional use of mud bricks alongside stone. The greatest advance, however, was the completion of alteration of the shape of a monument from a flat-topped rectangular structure known as a mastaba to a 6-stepped pyramid. This great character built the famous pyramid and set up the construction mechanisms of large buildings, paving the way for successors of their kingdom for even more daring constructions. The Pyramid of Djoser is the first pyramid in history of ancient Egypt and therefore potentially all of humanity. It is a degree pyramid that is at the center of a funerary complex of great importance. It's located in the necropolis of Saqqara. Sekhmet is probably the brother or eldest son of King Djoser. Little is known about this king since he ruled for only a few years. However, he erected a step pyramid at Saqqara and left behind a well-known rock inscription at the Wadi Menkaure. No Pep in his servant steps for sure, it's Pepi. So, Pepi the First kills the game. He does a great job ruling Egypt. He initiated the policy of intensive penetration of Nubia, south of the First Nile Cataract. Inscriptions record journeys southward early in his reign, and fragments of vessels bearing the king's name were excavated in Karma. Meanwhile, Pepi II is the longest running Egyptian monarch, surviving 94 years on the throne. He's also believed to be the youngest ruler ever in Egyptian history. Pepi II was the son of Pepi I, obviously, and was born late into his father's reign. While he was still very young, he succeeded his half-brother Merene, who died at an early age. His mother served as regent for a number of years, and the old group of officials serving the royal family maintained the kingdom's stability. During the first half of his rule, he brought prosperity and grandeur to Egypt. Second half? Nowhere close. You see a sharp decline of the Old Kingdom as economic disarray is caused by him virtually having no oversight. Powerful provincial nobles drew talent away from the capital, and because of the unusually long reign of the king, Egypt had a senile ruler when it needed vigorous leadership. Those of Pepi's children who survived him had brief ephemeral reigns and failed to cope with the political and economic crisis that arose as the 6th dynasty ended. His tomb may be more famous than he is. Menkaure's. His tomb, the Pyramid of Menkaure, is one of 3 pyramids of Giza, alongside his statue triads that show the king together with his wives and various deities. It's the smallest of the 3 main pyramids of Giza, just 62 meters tall, but has one of the most complex and best preserved structures. He had 2 wives, both are his sisters naturally, and they didn't have much luck with sons at first. 3 in total and 1 daughter. At his death, his successor, his son, Shafeskek, completed the stonework walls of the mortuary temple in brick. Menkaure was not succeeded by his eldest son, who actually predeceased him, but rather by Shepsake, a younger son. Shepsake built a monumental mastaba at the South Accra and was the only kingdom ruler to not build a pyramid. This family's work, especially the Great Pyramids, show a great mastery of monumental stoneworking. Individual blocks were large or colossal and were extremely accurately fitted. They were good, and then they were great, and then they were absolute trash. The Amenhotep. Alright, so on the top of the bucket we got Amen I. He's the great-great-granddaddy. He effectively extended Egypt's boundaries into Nubia. Next is great-granddaddy Amen II, who was an army leader with famous archery and battle skills. Supposedly he was able to shoot arrows straight through a thick of copper plates. His athletic ability was incredible, and he was known to have rowed a ship faster than 200 of Egypt's strongest navy men. Next is Granddaddy Amen III, who built himself endless monuments and temples. Perhaps his most famous construction was the Temple of Luxor in Thebes. This temple has become one of the grandest and most famous temples in Egypt. His diplomatic relations allowed art and culture to flourish, and his building projects are legendary. And then there's disastrous daddy Akhenaten, or Amen IV. This nutcase was obsessed with the sun god Atum and changed his name, appearance, politics, lifestyle, anything he could to feel closer to his lord. This pharaoh was so hated that Egyptians themselves wiped his name from their history. He moved Egypt's capital from Thebes to Amarna and then renamed it in Egyptian to mean the horizon of Aten, and then ordered a new capital city be built there, moving an estimated 20,000 people over to make it. When he enforced monotheism, Og failed to realize that the temples of Egypt were the nation's socio-economic cultural hubs. It was the god priests that oversaw all of their industries, so without them, those pillars of the communities were just gone. And stripping these temples of authority, he caused Egypt's biggest reception. And then we've got the bottom of the bucket, we have our boy Thutmose, aka King Tut, who by his 3rd year changed his name to Thutmose and issued decree restoring temples, images, personnel, and privileges of the old gods to undo what his dad had done. He also began the protracted process of restoring the sacred shrines of Amun, which had been severely damaged during his father's rule. No prescription or persecution of Aten, though, Akhenaten's god, was undertaken, and royal vineyards and regiments of the army were still named after Aten. Thutmose unexpectedly died in his 19th year. Whatever the case, he died without designating an heir. This is another 4-part family tree. First, great-granddaddy Snerfu founds the 4th dynasty and marries the daughter of the last pharaoh of the 3rd empire, thus helped to solidify his possession as the pharaoh of the new dynasty, as well as secure Khufu's place in the line of succession. Meanwhile, his son, who becomes Granddaddy Khufu, pops out the Great Pyramid of Giza, one of the 7 wonders of the world. Apparently we were so impressed by this that we forgot to write anything else about him or why he did this, because we know very little about Khufu. We know he reigned 23 years between 2500 and 2566, and we know he married his sister. Shocker. Khufu traded for highly rare items, prizing both construction materials and precious materials like copper and turquoise, and so he developed the mining industry in Egypt. Limestone and granite were also quarried in vast amounts for rather large building projects that he was working on. Built over a period of 27 years, the Great Pyramid is undoubtedly Khufu's greatest legacy. Khufu's children include 9 sons and 6 daughters, including Defreya and Khafre, who would both become pharaohs following his death. When in power, his son Defreya moved 8 kilometers north of Giza and established a new necropolis on a higher leveled ground. Defreya's pyramid was quarried for its stone, and as such, there's very little of it left standing today. Meanwhile, the underson Khafre succeeded the short-lived Radifi and married his sister and 2 other queens who were probably his sisters. Best known for his pyramid Pyramid, one of the 3 Great Pyramids of Giza, and also best known for the Sphinx, which bears his likeness on its face. And who else but the Rameses Clan? The Ramses I gets the throne in a super uneventful way. He was friend and confidant to the former pharaoh who didn't have a single heir. Then Ramses spent all of his free time marrying all 4 of his daughters. Meanwhile, his son, Seti I, led a great army of 60,000 men and fought in many battles north of Palestine and Syria. King Rameses II, son of Seti I, was able to finish his father's work by beating the Hittite army in Battle of Kadesh and creating the first documented peace treaty in history. Ramses II went on to declare himself a god and rule Egypt for 67 years before dying of natural causes at 90, which is insane in an era where life expectancy was 30. But before getting to that ripe old age, Ramses spent any free time he had chasing anything with 2 feet and a heartbeat, enough to sire 100 to 200 children in his lifetime. He even outlived 12 of his own sons, leaving no heir. They're back again, the Ptolemies! People loved learning about this batch of literal bastards in the recent top 10 powerful families in history you didn't want to mess with video. Apparently y'all like when I'm doing tongue twisters. For those who don't know why this family could be a tongue twister, an important note is that they always recycled the family names. Men always named Ptolemy and women always named Cleopatra or Berenice. They also happen to really take the old Egyptian ideology of royals only being with other royals a little too seriously. What's created is a massive family tree, one full of manipulation, contempt, scandal, and brash killings. While the Ptolemies started off strong, building the Library of Alexandria, compiled a star catalog and the earliest surviving table of trigonomic function, and establishing mathematically that an object is and its mirror image must make an equal angles to be a mirror. After the 4th, however, the family became like the Kardashians, talentless and messy. They took up everybody's time, but nobody stopped the free entertainment. So, like last time, let me limber up and I'll run us through some of the notorious BS. Ptolemy IV killed his mother, who had killed her husband, who was having a love affair with her mother, and then married his sister Arinso III, who was then later killed after Ptolemy IV died. Ptolemy XII annoyed his children so much, particularly his daughter Berenice IV, that they rebelled against him and drove him from Egypt. Berenice IV ruled briefly. She probably had her sister killed. She certainly had her husband strangled, who wasn't a family member. She was beheaded on the orders of her father. Ptolemy XII. Ptolemy XIV was the younger brother of Cleopatra VII, that's the Mark Antony one, and possibly poisoned by that same sister. Ptolemy VII was then killed by his uncle, the next Ptolemy VIII, at a wedding feast, or he may have been killed by his own father, Ptolemy IV. Scholars disagree. It's so messy, my mouth's so dry. Let's go on to the next one. Our favorite bearded lady was part of this family. It's the Thutmose Line. Granddaddy Thutmose I became king after Amenhotep died without an heir. Probably one of the previous monarch's generals, he came to the throne around age 40 and is thought to have ruled for a little over 10 years. Historians have generally described Thutmose II as a frail and ineffectual, just the sort of person that a purposely shrewish Hatshepsut could push around. Public monuments, however, depict a dutiful Hatshepsut standing appropriately next to her husband. Wife to Tut II, Hatshepsut failed in the more important duty of producing a son. So when Thut II died young in 1497, yet again, the throne went to a harem child. Duly named Thutmose III, this child was destined to become one of the great warrior kings of Egypt. But at the time of his father's death, he was too young to take the rule. As widow, Hat became regent leader until Thut came of age. Within a few years, however, she proclaimed herself pharaoh, a vile absurd. And the 7 years past that point, she'd taken up cross-dressing imagery. Once depicted as slim and graceful queen, is now full-blown, flail and crook-wielding king with the broad, bare chest of a man and the pharaoh false beard, but also still long flowing hair and feminine features. Upon Hat's death in 1458, her stepson, then likely in his early 20s, finally ascended to the throne. Thutmose III was a skilled warrior who brought Egypt's empire to the zenith of its power by conquering all of Syria and crossing the Euphrates. The spoils from his many wars made Thutmose III the richest man in the world. His military accomplishments are recorded on the numerous monuments he built himself. Alright, we are done, ladies and gents. I hope you enjoyed, and if you want to keep up with our regular postings, be sure to like and subscribe.